If you say that you love your mother and that you love ice cream, it's understood that one reference to love has a lighter meaning than the other. When it comes to the idea of Christian, some people use the term very lightly and very loosely. However, what is the serious meaning to Christian? What is the authentic understanding of what it means to be a Christian? Here are two statements from the New Testament that help us to understand what it means to be a Christian. They're found in the writings of the Apostle Peter. In his first letter, he writes in the 2nd chapter, "For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in his steps." Later in that letter, Peter writes in chapter 4, "Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in that manner." Very simply, a Christian is a follower of Christ. However, Peter is not using this expression in a flippant manner. You can see here that to follow Christ means to pay a price, even to suffer. So a follower of Christ is one who's really committed in their belief in Jesus and their commitment to be like him. Such quotes from the Bible show us how that the term Christian can be misapplied. For instance, the Bible does not talk about features of a society in terms of being Christian. People talk about Christian literature, Christian music, and Christian architecture. But in the Bible, a Christian is a person. It's a noun. It's one who follows after Christ. And also, the biblical definition does not merely include a churchgoer. Now, Jesus talked about his church. The New Testament is filled with teachings about Christ's church, and being part of his church is of utmost importance. But you and I know that it's possible to be a member of a religious organization and have very little interest in Christ. And so merely being a churchgoer does not a Christian make. And also, a Christian is not merely a moral and kind person. Someone may say, John is a Christian if I've ever seen one. And what a person sometimes means by that is that John is a moral and kind person. Jesus taught kindness and love and gentleness. He taught a strong moral standard. And if one follows after Christ, they're going to be kind and they're going to be a moral person. But one is moral and kind because they follow Christ. That's the essence of the meaning. A good question at this point is, how does one become a follower of Christ? After 2,000 years, how does one know about Jesus Christ and follow after him? Well, these references and quotes from Jesus himself show us. In John chapter 8, Jesus said, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples." He says later on in the Gospel of John in chapter 14, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him." Jesus made it possible that someone living 50 years after he was on earth, or 500 years later, or even 2,000 years later, for them to know about him and know how to follow him. And that guidance is found in the teachings, in the instructions, in the accounts about Jesus in the New Testament. By taking the New Testament documents that tell us about who Jesus was and what he said and what he did, and the instructions from his first followers by his help, then we can understand how to follow Jesus Christ. Even if we're living 2,000 years later, we can understand what it means to be a Christian, and we can be one. Herein lies one of the biggest challenges of becoming a Christian today. Will a person take simply the teachings of Christ found in the New Testament and follow them as a guide, or will they follow some other standard in trying to become a Christian? For centuries, people have piled on top of the New Testament, their own ideas and traditions. The original teachings of Jesus have been smothered. Uncover them. Let them breathe. Bring them out to the light of day and look at them for yourself. And when you look at the original teachings of Christ found in the New Testament, you can find a clear path for following Him. Well, if you're going to use the teachings of Christ and them alone, how do you become a Christian? What are the first steps? Well, that's an important question that we'll address in the next video installment.